China may be our friend, but India is our brother. This is the statement which is quite common in Sri Lankan politics these days. Hello everyone. Let us talk about India and China's relation in terms of Sri Lankan dispute, or in other words, we can say India and Sri Lanka's relation with a Chinese angle. So India and Sri Lanka shares a lot of similarities because if we talk about the mythology, then we can trace the relation up to 2500 years ago. The cultural and social similarities are a lot because a large amount of Tamilians are living in Sri Lanka and also in India. There are a lot of Tamilians in the states of Tamil Nadu. So there is a lot of cultural, social, and mythological similarity. Also, talking about the geography, then Sri Lanka is one of the most geographically important island country in the world because it is right in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where most of the trade of the world of the trade happens in the world, and also India is very much neighboring to Sri Lanka. Uh, so that is why we can say that India and Sri Lanka are very natural friends because of their history and their presence and their present significance to each other. But there is a Chinese angle to it because recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, Sri Lanka got a huge a huge hit on its economy because of two reasons. Number one, the COVID-19 struck on the world, and because Sri Lankan economy is very much dependent on the tourism. Then in the COVID-19 time, we all know that the tourism was almost prohibited throughout the world. That is why the Sri Lankan government as well as the Sri Lankan economy was not able to make much profits. The another reason was that the Chinese debt trap. And Sri Lanka is a country which is caught in the Chinese debt trap. There is a lot of debt burden, and at the same time, Sri Lanka is not having enough foreign reserves to gather up the food and energy supplies, but it have to pay the Chinese debt of billions of dollars in the coming few years. So now we can say that Sri Lanka is almost at the brink of bankruptcy, and it is demanding some help packages from the world, also from India. That is why recently we saw that the Sri Lankan foreign minister visited India last week, and they demanded some package, and India also uh, helped uh, helped Sri Lanka in the hour of need. So India's help can be seen in many different ways because in the last visit of the foreign minister of Sri Lanka, India announced some packages like the food and health security package, like the energy security package, and also many loan agreements. So India is willing to devote billions of US dollars to save its neighboring country and its old friend Sri Lanka. Also, Sri Lanka refused the IMF packages because it was getting help from India. Because in IMF packages, the Sri Lankan government had to give control over its economy to the IMF, and the economy will be very much governed under the IMF conditions. So Sri Lanka saved its uh, power of authority, and Sri Lanka the asked for the funds from India, and India helped Sri Lanka, and a lot of infrastructure development are also going on by India. So let us talk about the Chinese angle to it. Well, at the time of need, when Sri Lanka is very much in debt trap and the economy, food supplies, foreign reserves, everything is in bad condition, then Sri Lanka also asked for help to China also. Sri Lanka demanded two things. Number one, flexible trade schemes so that the tariffs that Sri Lankan producers are facing in China should be taken care of, but China refused it. Another thing that Sri Lanka asked was getting relief from debt burden because a lot of debt is there. Because a lot of Chinese debt is there, almost 10% of the whole Sri Lankan foreign debt is from China. So, but China also refused the demand of some relief package and from relief from a debt burden. China refused them all. And another thing was that a few years back, the Sri Lankan government banned the import of any chemical fertilizers, and they tried to completely shift their agriculture to organic farming. But that was not possible because of the obvious reasons that organic farming requires a lot of inputs, and the produce is very much low. So there is a situation of food shortage in Sri Lanka because the agriculture is not able to meet the demand of its population. So uh, for that, Sri Lankan government placed an order in a Chinese company for some organic fertilizer, but those fertilizers when reached the Sri Lankan ports, then when they were checked, then they were found to be contaminated with many harmful chemicals, from them the Sri Lankan government refused to pay the money to the Chinese companies. So this is also a matter of tussle between the two countries. Talking about India versus China angle, then talking about the investments, then the out of the complete investment that are made in Sri Lanka by foreign investors, India is holding 10% of the investments, and but China is holding 23% of the investments. And and if we talk about the loans, then India has started giving loans to Sri Lanka, uh, but till now India is not having much stake in the foreign debt of Sri Lanka, whereas, as I mentioned before, China is having almost 10% of stake in the Sri Lankan foreign debt. Also, there has been many issues where the two countries, India and China, have been to the logger's head, and they have been into the dispute because of the Sri Lankan territory, like the Hambantota port. China has today captured the Hambantota port almost completely from the Sri Lankan government, and as Chinese aggression policies, experts say that soon it will build some defense infrastructure on that port, and which definitely is not liked by India, because India is a country which wants to and which should enjoy a complete dominance in the Indian Ocean. The Chinese presence completely prohibits India's dominance in the Indian Ocean, and there have been many other issues, uh, like uh, like the Colombo port issue. So the Indian and Japanese companies were about to given the tender of building and using the eastern terminal of the Colombo port, but due to the Chinese pressure, and also due to the Chinese funded NGOs protests, uh, this this project was declined by the Sri Lankan government. But only after a few weeks, the western terminal of the Colombo port uh, was was tendered, and India and Japanese companies uh, were given the were given the tender to build and use the western terminal of the Colombo port, and the majority of the stake goes to the Adani Group, which is an Indian company, as we all know. So this is a thing where India won despite of being a Chinese pressure on Sri Lankan government. Another thing was that the Trincomalee oil farm project was there, and these are some big oil tankers on the Trincomalee island, and the Chinese pressurized the Sri Lankan government not to give these oil tankers on lease to India. But the Indian government captured the deal, and now India is holding 61 oil tankers, which are huge in capacity, on the Trincomalee island, and which can be used to store the oil. And because currently the crude oil prices are rising too much, and it and as the experts say that Russia and Ukraine are also having some disputes. So and Russia is very big oil exporter. So in future the oil prices will rise for years maybe, but with the use of these oil tankers, which India has taken on lease for 100 years on the Trincomalee island of Sri Lanka, India will be able to save oil and run its economy very well. So this was about India and Sri Lanka and Chinese angle to it relations. But there is another thing that there are a lot of Sri Lanka, there are a lot of Tamil people in Sri Lanka, and in the 2000s, in the late 2000s, there were many in the civil war time. There were many operations of the Sri Lankan military over the Tamil people in Sri Lanka, and when this matter is raised in the international forum, then generally India refrain from voting in favor or in against, but the Sri Lankan Tamils wants India to vote in favor of them, that yes, the operations were done on Tamil. So this angle is also very crucial because in the recent visit of Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka, the Indian government pressurized the Sri Lankan government to at least recognize this operation that was done in 2008 and 9. So this was about India and Sri Lanka relation with the Chinese angle. Thank you very much.